Look, what if I told you a Ferrari race plan got wrecked not by a mistake, but by two rivals turning a fight into a spectacle that changed the whole race pace? Today we dive into the Chinese GP battle between Hamilton and Leclerc, why some call it genius racecraft and others call it a wrecking of Ferrari's strategy. Context: we're looking at how a high-stakes, high-pressure on-track duel can ripple through an entire team's weekend. Villeneuve says it destroyed Ferrari's race, while others see a bold risk that exposed Mercedes' pace and Leclerc's willingness to push. This isn't just about one overtake. It's about race psychology, tire management, and whether staying within your team's plan is ever worth personal glory on the track. Main breakdown. Idea 1. The overtake as racecraft masterclass. Commentary. What makes this really interesting is how both drivers executed a late-breaking pass, turning a standard maneuver into a moment of pressure testing. From my perspective, Lewis's awareness in the braking zone shows why he's considered a world champion in terms of sensory timing and risk management. What this really suggests is that top-level racing often rewards calculated aggression, not just raw speed. One thing that immediately stands out is how Charles and Lewis balanced aggression with control. That balance is what separates great drivers from good ones. If you take a step back and think about it, this overtake isn't just a pass. It's a study in how to manage tires, engine modes, and race rhythm under a looming threat from behind. Idea 2. Ferrari's strategic dilemma and the destroyed race claim. Commentary. The argument hinges on whether the Ferrari pairing viewed Mercedes as a separate threat or a distraction they could absorb. In my opinion, Ferrari's weekend cadence was forced into a reactive mode by the Hamilton-Leclerc duel, which constrained their ability to capitalize on other opportunities. What many people don't realize is that even when you're leading a race, external battles can derail your planned pit windows and tire choices. From my view, the bigger takeaway is how teams must weigh internal fight quality against broader strategic gains. Sometimes a flashy duel costs more than it returns. What this implies is a broader trend. The modern F1 weekend is as much about tempo and psychology as about outright lap times. Idea 3. The counterpoint. Is Mercedes win proof of a wider trend? Commentary. Jamie Chadwick's take reframes the scene. Mercedes wasn't truly fighting Ferrari that day, but they benefited from the chaos. What makes this really interesting is how one team's advantage, Mercedes finishing 1-2, can be framed as opportunistic rather than masterful strategy. In my assessment, this underscores a recurring pattern in F1. Sometimes the success comes from capitalizing on rivals' missteps rather than executing a flawless plan. This raises a deeper question about team strategies. Should a squad tolerate a rival's on-track duel if it opens doors for a comfortable podium or race win? From my perspective, the incident highlights how dynamic racecraft and decision-making at the pit wall shape outcomes as much as the track action. Deeper insight. The Chinese GP duel, though visually exciting, is a microcosm of how modern Formula One blends risk, car development, and strategy. If you zoom out, you see a sport where drivers must constantly recalibrate their plans to the evolving battlefield. Tire wear, brake temperatures, and fuel windows all play a role in whether a bold move pays off or backfires. A detail I find fascinating is how fans and pundits differ on where responsibility lies, the aggressor's skill versus the defender's ability to adapt. What this really suggests is that era-defining races aren't just about one heroic overtake. They're about how the entire ecosystem, teams, engineers, and the driver's inner compass responds under pressure. What this means for the sport is that the line between audacious play and reckless risk is thinner than it looks, and the winners are often the ones who navigate that line most deftly. Closing thought. If we step back, this episode is less about who got the podium and more about what it reveals about racing culture today. The sport rewards awareness, adaptive strategy, and the willingness to chase moments that could define a season. For fans, the takeaway is clear. Mastery in F1 is as much about reading the room as it is about breaking power or engine punch. What do you think? The next great duel will be courtside in the cockpit or decided by the tire crew from the garage? Let me know your take in the comments.